I get to be your host today. My name's Adam Teese. I'm the Director of Metropolitan Development. I'm not interested in sitting down because we're going to grill this. No, just kidding. Glad you're all here today. I'm going to let all of them go down the line, just give a brief introduction, and then we'll jump in. So start with David. Go ahead.
David Flaherty, Flaherty & Collins Properties. We're headquartered here in Indianapolis, and we develop, build, and manage apartment communities around the Midwest. Our development emphasis is urban infill downtown developments, mixed use, and most of those fall into what we call the public-private realm, and we have a big affordable component as well that we do, mostly in Indiana, on the affordable.
Darren Kentner, Deputy Mayor for Economic Development for the City of Indianapolis. A lot of my work is on some of these downtown projects that have been public-private partnerships, so fortunately I know a lot of you in the audience, and welcome.
Good morning, my name is Sherry Sywert. I'm president of Indianapolis Downtown, Inc., and we help to manage, market, and develop downtown.
Good morning, Ursal Ozdemir, Keystone Realty Group, and Indy 11 Soccer.
Good morning, sorry. There's something about it. My name's Tom McGowan. I'm president and CEO of Kite Realty Group Trust based in Indianapolis. Our office is at 30 South Meridian. We're a publicly traded shopping center REIT. You may have read we're in the midst of a sizable merger right now, a $2.1 billion merger with Inland Diversified, and hoping to get that closed this summer, taking us up to about $4 billion. So a lot going on at our shop right now.
So right off the bat, let's give a round of applause. Each of these people could be doing other things today. We appreciate that. All right, so this event, 9 a.m. in the morning, I anticipate half of you are really looking at BlackBerries and iPhones. It's just like church, the back filled very full. Look, every single row, lined up, front up here in church by the preachers, no thank you. So if any of you want to be liberal and come up and be around all of us and have a nice, fun conversation, just do that. The goal is to have some fun and to have some interesting conversation. That's why you're here today. So I'm hopefully going to take some cues from all of you when you ask some Q&A, but hopefully we'll dive into some questions that make all of these folks talk much more than me. So my first question, Indianapolis is really not the 13th or 12th largest city in the country. It's a little bit of a unigov fabrication. We're really more around the 30th or 35th largest city in the country. So we punch above our weight class a lot. So talk to me about something we're doing very well, we're punching very well above our weight class, and something we're getting punched by. Down the panel.
Something we're doing very well. There is a focus here in Indianapolis on downtown, which we think is good, not just for Indianapolis, but really good for the state. So I would say that's something that we're doing very, very well. Something that we're not doing well, let me think on that, and I'll get back to you.
And you can use other cities, too, to give some reference to where some other cities are going.
Probably not surprisingly, I'd say our public-private partnerships that we're able to get done here that a lot of cities struggle with for a variety of reasons, and that's historical, not just the recent past. So that's what I think we do well. This isn't really what we don't do well, but I think one of our struggles is the lack of corporations that are based here, particularly Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. When you look at our peer cities, we seem to be lacking. And there's all kinds of value and ancillary benefits besides just the jobs that come with having those types of corporations based here. So that's one thing that in a perfect world we would have more of.
I think one thing that we're doing well is with downtown, we certainly have always been very walkable. We are far better connected with the cultural trail, and certainly now with the added bike lanes, we're connecting the rest of the city to downtown. Obviously what we're not doing well is better transit, but I know that we're working on that.
I would agree with the panel. Downtown is doing really well. There's a lot of momentum. One thing to do better, I would love to see more architecturally unique buildings downtown, and as well as more green space, thoughtful green space downtown that makes it feel more welcoming.
I'd say one of the big positives downtown is our tourism set. Indianapolis competes very aggressively with other mid-tier cities around the country. And if you look at cities like Cleveland and Cincinnati and Kansas City, we generate more convention tourism business attendees than all these mid-cities combined. So if you take a look at the tourism industry, you're generating about 74,000 full-time jobs, about $2 billion of economic impact. 588 conventions visit our city every year. So if you saw the NRA and you saw what happens downtown, this mass infusion of people that Sherry obviously concentrates on a lot, they're spending money in our restaurants, in our hotels, supporting the cabs, supporting the airport. So Indianapolis has done a phenomenal job with that, and we have a very tight package. We have more hotel rooms interconnected than even Minneapolis. So that's a big deal to the city, is to continue to push that strength. From a negative perspective, since I brought up Minneapolis, you think of all the Fortune 5s in Indianapolis, so I'm going to piggyback on Darren a little bit, that if we can secure more Fortune 5s, we got Cummins coming down, which is awesome for the city. But we need to continue to do that, continue to bring those high-paying jobs and get people into Marion County and support our base.
All right, ladies first. So Sherry's surrounded by all these gentlemen on both sides. She's flanked.
Scarlet at the barbecue.
That's right. That's right. So Sherry, your day job is to eat, sleep, and drink downtown and to view it. Talk us all through what the recent Velocity effort was. What did you learn? What came out of the effort? How did it evolve? And where do you think it actually helps the city, in particular downtown, going forward?
Normally, this is at least an hour presentation,
Yes.
so I will keep it
in 5 minutes or less, Sherry, please.
Velocity is a plan that, it was a co-created plan launched with IDI and a number of our partners that we work closely with for downtown, 5-year strategic tactical plan that we put together and launched this past December. And we looked at 6 different constructs that really make up a healthy downtown. Certainly, we've had an explosion of multifamily residential development downtown, and I think, as Adam just mentioned, what we really learned was downtown has always been a place where people come to visit, people come to work, but we're really starting to look at downtown from a residential perspective. So Ursula just mentioned more public space, or better public space. And how do we enhance the space that we have? How do we turn some of the green space into very usable, fun experience? How do we, how do we add more dog parks? You know, when you think about living out in the suburbs, there are so many amenities that are offered that we don't have downtown. So we're really trying to look at what else we need to add to make residents want to not only move downtown, but stay downtown.
So David, you're in the game of selling to people living. As you heard those comments, what resonates and how are you seeing the idea of living downtown? Obviously, you're significantly invested in some projects coming forward. What does that mean in the next 5, 10 years? What does living in downtown look like?
I think what's kind of happened, if you step back and look, this isn't just Indianapolis, this is really throughout the country, there was a shift away from kind of the city and out to the suburbs. I think I even heard you talk, Adam, that it was almost 400,000 people that may have, since 1950, moved out of central Indianapolis and moved out to the suburbs. And now there's really a fundamental change in way of people think, and they want to live in the action. They want to walk out of their residence. They want to walk to the restaurants. They want to walk to the bars, the cultural, the sporting events. And there's no place better in Indiana than downtown Indianapolis for those things. And what Sherry and the city are doing in creating more green space, the trails, doing things like that, and really also partnering with developers to bring developments downtown that would not exist. You know, that's what's helping Indianapolis. But there's the new generation, the millennials. I think there was a survey out, 88% of millennials want to live in a downtown area. So you've got all of these people that want to live downtown, and it's a slow process, but obviously we're picking up speed now with all the help from the city to allow these developments to take place.
So Tom, let's go real back a little bit to the tourism question. You obviously have a long family history in the storyline of Indianapolis and tourism. We've been successful. We could high five, we could pat each other on the back, but talk us through 5, 10, 20 years down the line. What does that industry look like, and what does it mean to a downtown that then becomes a living destination, not just a visiting destination?
Well, first of all, like a lot of industries, it's extremely competitive right now. You take a look at Louisville and some of these other cities, Nashville, they're coming after us in a significant way. Basically expanding their convention center set, adding hotels. So we cannot stay in place. We cannot tread water because they've seen the great success. All these cities come to Indianapolis, the mid-tiers, and how do you guys pull this off? So what we need to do is we need to maintain the aggressive approach, continue to look for ways to improve and expand the convention center. And I think you'll hear more about that here in the future of what are the next steps. What are the additional hotels that need to be established to raise the bar to attract even larger conventions into our city? We just saw NRA here. We got to keep raising the bar. It's like any other industry. So we have to have the mindset that we can't stand still, that we got to get ahead and get after the people like Chicago where we can compete. So we got to keep moving, and that will create an even more vibrant market.
Can living, visiting, and working in downtown coexist? Where's that game? Where's that balance? Do you think how does that work moving forward, do you think?
I think it works tremendously. And I'll give you one example, and I don't think I can get in trouble for saying this, but...
Well, the government guys are here, so you're fine.
But when we developed the Conrad, one of the things that we talked about is we're building the nicest hotel in the city, obviously, which will help then attract the cream of these conventions and get people to want to stay here, and it gives us a different angle. But the other thing we wanted to try to do was set the market in terms of the high end of the residential, which really hadn't been done yet. And I do think it's important to have all the tiers, the high, middle, and low, and I'm passionate about the low, having worked with Sherry in the past. But if you think about what we did there, you have the chairman of Lilly and the chairman of General Motors living on top of that building. Now, would that have ever happened in the past? No. And if you think about that really speaks volumes to downtown Indianapolis. And we continue to do that. We can continue to raise that bar, both in the top, middle, and lower, because it's got to be across the board. So if you see these guys walking to work, which is pretty cool, you say, no, this can work. It can be live, work, play.
So, Ursal, I need a scarf. We all should have scarves, right? I've decided that soccer fans have scarves, and it's obviously a very compelling sport. Tremendous turnout for the first few games. Great story. Round of applause for Indy 11. How about that? Great story. So Indianapolis and sports is synonymous. I was in Vancouver, British Columbia about 2 weeks ago. I met with the planning director there, and he said, how did you pull off sports? I mean, Vancouver, I'm like, how did you pull off Vancouver? You know, I'm not here to talk about me. But so Indy 11, sports, soccer, what does it mean for Sports 2.0 in Indianapolis in your eyes? What is that? What's the answer to that question? What is Sports 2.0?
Well, I think the city leaders back in 34 years ago, when they decided to use sports as really a business engine, because I assume back then downtown didn't look anything like it is now. It didn't even look what it is now when I moved here 15, 16 years ago. So that was a strategy, and I think it's paid off. I mean, we're all sitting here partly talking about projects that probably wouldn't have happened if they didn't choose a strategy. I'm guessing at that point they sat down, they said, what are we going to do to make downtown downtown? And I mean, you can argue obviously on both sides of it, but I think it's worked out well. We have some of the best sports teams in the country, obviously very popular, and brings, you know, millions of people downtown that wouldn't be here. Going back to, I think Dave was talking about 88% of the millennials, they want to live downtown. And if you look at our demographics, actually, it's number one is millennials. So for those guys that actually love to live downtown and the next generation of leaders, this is a sport they love. You know, youth is it's number basically, another number two, and our third is internationals. So if you think about being a more diverse international and youth, which is the future, and millennials that are current or future leaders of the city, so we have a really good strong base that is coming up that love the sport, love the passion, want to support their local team. And it's just different. It's, you know, I feel it's another diversity to the market. Not everybody necessarily likes certain type of sports. We want everybody at least come and try if they are not a soccer fan. But I think it's another piece that adds to the pie. some of the cities we're talking about that we're competing, we're 30 city, but you look at the cities, Portland, Seattle, and Kansas, even Utah, Columbus, Chicago. So a lot of these cities already have these teams to do that. So nobody's going to move here, obviously, because there's a soccer team, but it's another basically attractive point for Exact Target, Angie's List. All these companies, they're trying to attract Lilly, international youth. That's another basically check on their box. Oh, you have a soccer team, great.
So a few games in, what's of your kind of customer feedback? What shocked you the most? What did you not anticipate a few games into this?
If I told you I expected complete sold out, I would be lying. But we were hoping that we thought that there will be sold out, and that was we believe in, obviously, because our management team decided to stop at season tickets 6 months ago. They thought it was important to have individual and group tickets left for a lot of youth clubs around the state for people to enjoy for 1 or 2 games. Idea would have been to have as many people as possible to see at least 1 game or more during the first year, to have a bigger, larger base to do that. So that was really, we were hoping that, and we thought we will do that, but really getting to the stadium until being there and, at the moment was really special. Seeing the amount of support from the millennials, the group that started with 8 people, from a firefighter to a teacher to now they have over 2,500 members. You know, they occupy 1 section of the stadium. I don't know if you've been to soccer games, but they don't play actual music during the game. You have it before and halftime after the game, but during the game, it's the supporters group actually that are the music. They write songs to the team. They write songs to the visiting team. Some of them are not as complimentary as they should be, but that's just really their passion. And when they leave, they lose their voice, and they kind of a decharge and get ready for the next week, Monday, start work. So it's a different, it's similar to the European and South American and rest of the world, but it's a little bit different than what we have here.
So I kept Darren for last because he and I are just happy to be out of the city-county building for a little while. And no one with orange suits followed us over here, so that was nice. So Darren, you and I obviously live in this world of the government as it relates to land and property and real estate. How do you see this story of public-private partnerships in Indianapolis evolving? We're known nationally for it. When people talk about Indianapolis in our world, they talk about public-private partnerships, they talk about Circle Center, they talk about Bill Hudnut years, Goldsmith years, Peterson years, all those years. How do you think that evolves going forward? What's that storyline of public-private partnerships going forward?
That's a great question. I'm hopeful that it continues as it has or improves to the extent that it can. I think you'll still see certain real estate projects that, due to the challenges of urban infill type development will still require some city help to get done. And the city should be evaluating those on what they can get without participating versus what they can buy, and to just compare and see what's better for the city. I think we've done a good job, and probably others before us, but all the deals we've done have really been good business decisions for the city. And I've told people that if you look at what our controller's office does with the funds they have to invest versus what we've done with the funds we've invested in these projects, the rate of return is astronomically higher for the projects that we participate in. So I think you'll still see it on the real estate side, right? Where you're also going to see it is just in more government operations, and that's not anything that's going to be unique to Indianapolis, but a lot because of tight budgets, and in part because of recognition that a lot of things private sector can do better than government, even if it's government related. You're going to see more and more government operations go the public-private partnership way. Example, our consolidated criminal justice facility that we're working on, that will be a public-private partnership where you'll have a private developer come in and do the design, operate, finance, maintain. Well, I probably left something out, but you'll start seeing that, I think, in more and more government operations in the P3 world.
Little group conversation now. So you're all well-traveled. You get out, you see the rest of the country. What are some other cities that you're going to and you're saying, wow, I really like what they're doing. That's really compelling. That has a lot of analogy to Indianapolis. What are some other cities out there that you're seeing? You get a free pass. You can say it, Darren, even though we're government employees. Go Indianapolis. So what other places?
I like Minneapolis. Because I always bring everything back to Indianapolis because we're looking at pretty much all the major markets around the Midwest. Minneapolis is a little bit larger than Indianapolis, so they're a little bit farther ahead. They're very lucky with their Fortune 500 companies, but what they're doing downtown, I don't know if they're as good on the public-private partnership as what Indianapolis is, but they're pretty progressive in their bike trails and bringing development downtown. They're trying to get their sporting venues are downtown as well. They have retail down there, so that's a city that I look to when I'm looking at what we can do in Indianapolis as a comparison.
Others.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Nicollet Mall in the heart of Minneapolis is pretty neat. It's so dense, and it opens up on the summer days. It's a great spot. So I would put that first. Another city that I love traveling to right now, where we're busy in, is Houston. You know, if you look at Exxon's headquarters, you don't see this very often. 15 tower cranes going up, and they've just really ridden the energy boom, and so much growth, so much potential in that city. So you always get a little jealous when you see those tower cranes in Houston.
Others, come on, you travel.
I would say because of size-wise similar. Obviously, it's hard to say. I was in New York last week, right? So there's a lot of good stuff in a lot of these places, but I would say similar sizes. Portland has some. I mentioned about the green space downtown, and their soccer stadium, for example, is kind of in a way, Wrigley area. So it's a little bit, downtown and walkable, more green spaces, more smaller districts, basically. So it's not just really downtown, but I obviously love to see Fountain Square continue to grow, and the east near east side, near south side, and so you have these pockets that have different things to offer to different. Because downtown itself is not going to be for everybody necessarily. Some people want to have a dog park, so we want to able to have areas that do that. So able to offer diversity of products as well as to compete with suburbs as well as to attract the new millennials to downtown.
Our final two.
I'm actually, Adam, there are elements in a variety of other cities that I thought, well, that'd be great if we had that. But there is no other city that I have traveled to recently thinking, boy, this beats Indianapolis. And every time I come home, I think Indianapolis really is a fabulous city. And I don't say that just because I'm president of IDI. We are, and we really need to figure out a better way of branding and selling ourselves, not only for our corporations, but just in our talking. We're very humble. We have a wonderful city, and I'll agree with Ursula. I do wish we had. I do love. We hear a lot from Mass Avenue, and we hear a lot now from Fountain Square. We probably do need more neighborhood destinations in closer proximity to downtown. But beyond that, I like Indianapolis. Good.
Darren?
I thought I didn't have to answer this. I would say, I got to start with nothing's better than Indianapolis. I think I'm required with the position to say that, and it's true. But one is Nashville, and probably not a surprise if those who read the bio. It's a city I enjoy visiting, and I've talked to some of us on this panel and in the audience before that Nashville as a city has really been lacking in their downtown and making it a priority. Now that they are, and Tom mentioned earlier, it should be a little concerning to us because being very similar to us in their compactness of their downtown, they have a little bit better weather. They have the whole lower Broadway country music scene that is just exploding across the country and really adds an element that quite frankly we don't have here. Sherry and I have talked about trying to replicate it to the extent we can. But that's a city that has just invested over, I think, $1 billion in its convention center and downtown hotels, is doing more. And I know previously they've been very hesitant to engage in public-private partnerships with developers, and that probably was a reason for their downtown kind of lagging behind. But if they were to kind of get their stuff together, so to speak, I think it could be really challenging for us, as we could probably compete for a lot of similar conventions and events.
Let's shift gears a little bit. I imagine there's some brokers in the audience. Let's talk about the future of officing in America. We obviously have a central business district here, a traditional home to the myriad of office types that would occupy the towers and buildings of our downtown. As you all look out and you think about how are people going to work in the future, what resonates with you about what you've heard and what you've seen in terms of our downtown market and our downtown buildings? There's obviously some shift going on right now. There's some difference in the way we're starting to work. Anyone want to comment about that?
Well, I'll start off. Ursal and I were in Bloomberg's headquarters in New York last week, meeting with the chairman of Bloomberg, which was pretty cool. And he took over for Michael when he ran for mayor. And one thing we noticed in their headquarters, there wasn't a single wall in that entire building. And this is one of the prettier buildings in all of Manhattan. And Michael Bloomberg's, Peter Grau, all these guys, open space. And it really leads you to believe that interaction is going to become more and more important. Hoteling, all those things, working remotely. So I do think there's a shift, and it will probably come to Indianapolis a little bit later. Lily's jumped on it. We used to do a lot of their relocation space planning services a while back, so they've been very aggressive in terms of looking forward on how that works. But I think it's going to continue to evolve, continue to change, especially the generations below us. They're going to be more apt to working remotely. So I see big changes coming.
What does that mean for the buildings we have?
It's a good question. I think having the space availability is important. I think you'll need a little bit less space because when you take down the walls, like our shop, there's walls everywhere. And when you take down those walls and you create open spaces, interactive spaces, it does allow you to take less space. It's just a simple fact. So what we have to do, back to some of the points we talked about, is we got to bring new jobs into the city. I mean, we have to continue to evolve, bring the jobs in, create a healthy marketplace, keep that demand up, because the office market, and John Crisp and some other people can talk about it better than me, but we've stayed fairly stagnant since the 1980s when I was playing around in office in downtown. So that's really going to be the key, to bring those new jobs in, bring energy, find a niche for the city to help attract, like Houston's been so successful.
Others?
Yeah, I know our office market hasn't been great. I'm not an office market guy, but what I have seen, not so much here, but employers, if you're after the top talent, it used to be the talent would come to you. And it'd be interesting to ask Cummins this, if this entered into their decision to be downtown. But there has been around the country, Chicago, where it's unbelievably expensive to do business downtown, they've just had, I think, 2 or 3 major employers relocate to downtown. And the reason they're doing that is they can get the better talent. That's where the young people, the young professionals want to live. And if you're after the best talent, and if you're located where they want to live, it's going to give you an advantage when you're recruiting those people. I would guess when Cummins is out trying to recruit from the top schools, some of the top graduates, and they're looking at, okay, where am I going to live? And they're competing against somebody in Chicago or somewhere else. If they can live downtown Indianapolis and walk to work and be in all the action, that's going to give them an advantage. So I do think it may take time, but as more people live downtown and the more desirable it comes, it will help. There'll be a ripple effect for the office market.
I'll speak to it a little bit. One, I think that's exactly what Cummins was thinking. Also, that's what Lilly was thinking, and really the driver behind Cityway. When they worked with us in Buckingham and developing that, they needed to spice up the area around their campus and connected more to downtown and make it a more vibrant place as they competed with Boston, London, San Diego, you name it, for talent. But I think the real kind of dichotomy we're going to have, though, is there is going to be more demand for office space downtown. I don't see it changing where there's going to be any demand for much of the existing office space we have, having worked with Cummins and the Indianapolis Star within the last year, and that just wasn't really a strong option, not what they preferred for reasons Tom mentioned. So just because we have the space and we have the demand for space, it doesn't mean that the demand's going to accept the supply we have. So I think that's going to be a problem. Something's got to be figured out, and probably will require the building owners to kind of reinvest in their space.
Okay, let's shift gears real quick again. Last week, the mayor, Darren, myself, Sherry, we announced a new district in downtown, Market East.
Cultural district.
That's where I'm going with this. So there's a rebuttal in the Indy Star that says it's not a cultural district. So why are we talking about culture in a place that doesn't actually have any built product? Can we create culture in new built product in Indianapolis? Can we have cultural changes, or should culture just be related to history?
Are you referring directly to Market East? I'm
Yes.
looking at David, because a lot of the culture is going to be developed out of your...
Yeah.
So debate that for me. Debate this for me. I actually have a very personal opinion, but I'm curious as what you all think. Can we build great districts from the ground up?
I'm obviously partial to Market
Yeah.
Square, and I saw the kind of the rebuttal, but no, I don't agree with that. That culture has to be something old, something historic. I mean, what we're doing there will be iconic, cutting edge, but I don't think that makes it non-cultural to do that. It's something very special, and it'll spur a lot of other things in the area. So I do disagree that you can't. That culture has to be old.
Others.
You know, think about Brattleboro. It has its own culture. I mean, it's Brattleboro. You're right. Can you create a culture around? I mean, we have the city market. You know, it too has. It's one of the only city markets in the country. I think we have 5 that still remain. And so, yes, there is culture that exists there. And so I think that the district will grow up around. But it just for folks that think about that area, there's nothing in their minds right now. So I think it's hard for them to identify with a culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it's short-sighted to say you can't create things, and especially in the built environment, in real estate and land planning. And it may take time to build that culture. It's not going to happen overnight. And it may not be exactly what you planned it to be, but it will evolve, and it will create a personality of its own. So we have to be creative. We have to bring more people into Marion County. That's the bottom line. You know, when I drive home every night, I get north, a little bit north of downtown, and I always get frustrated at that gap as you get up to 38th Street. I mean, let's face it, you have to, all of us have to address that. And the way we address it is bring more people into Marion County, have more tax base, create more jobs. And if we're creating these districts, that's bringing people into downtown. But we can't ignore the fact that we have this strong downtown, but we have some tough situations on that perimeter that we have to correct and have to fix, and we got to get people to live in Marion County.
Okay, final question before Connie gives me the high sign. Let's talk about mass transit. Let's talk about it in the view of downtown, not the view of the entire region, but the view of downtown. What does mass transit mean, and what needs to happen with it to make it successful for all of the work you are all in? What matters to you when it comes to mass transit, as opposed to the question, do you like it, yes or no? Because most people say, yeah, sure, I like it. But how does it relate to your products and your work as it would be considered going forward with the population?
Right now, people don't regularly use Indigo. It's not consistent from a timing perspective. It doesn't feel good when you get on. It feels a little dirty, and you don't know where to pick it up. You don't know where it's going to drop you off. So just from a consistency standpoint, you know when it's going to come. It's going to come more than it comes once an hour. If you miss that bus, you're done for. So how do we make them run faster or more often? How do we make them run on time? How do we make them circulate more around downtown so that if I am over at Lilly, I can get on it and take it over to IU Health? Those sorts of things I think would benefit from my perspective.
Others?
I'll talk my brother-in-law's book. He's a head of Charlotte City Center, similar to what Sherry does, and they're really the economic development engine for Charlotte. And a lot of folks from Indianapolis have come to see him because Charlotte's had a very successful run at public transportation. These rails that they've put in are doing extremely well. And the cool part for me, and you're saying how does it impact us, is if you get on Google Earth and you follow that rail, you will see the sticks coming up all the way down the rail, every stop. So you're not only bringing a rail to and from, but you're creating these hubs at these stops, and you're creating development, and you're creating tax base, and you're bringing people, hopefully, into Marion County. So that rail becomes a powerful spline. It's not just point A to point B, but it's the stops along the way that create attractive places to live and attractive places to create ingress, egress components into your work. So I think that's the important part of what it does for all of us, is it creates junior hubs all the way through that spline. So get on a Google Earth and follow that. It's pretty amazing.
Rashal, you had a comment.
I grew up in Turkey, so for 18 years. That was all public transportation. Turkey, Kentucky, Turkey around Kentucky. But it's so I'm used to basically part of that. I think I don't necessarily, I mean, it's great to have light rail. We didn't have light rail. It's obviously it's a little luxury, but I think you can still do a great job with buses. The main thing is, as Sharon mentioned, so it needs to feel safe. So when you're 14, 18, if you're able to get on a bus or a minibus, they have it more, and you need to be able to move people very fast. And you need to be able to go not once an hour, once every 2 hours. You need to have it so that actually people can rely on it. They know that if they have to get to 8 and they catch the 7:15 bus, they will be there on time. So if you can't do that because you want to be employed. So I think besides, do you believe in the public transportation or not? I think the main for me is that there's an economic growth piece of this. And from a real estate component, you're asking how to relate it to us. So if you had more people taking public transportation to downtown, you wouldn't require more parking garages. Or if you don't require more public garages, you're talking about office space. So that, when you're comparing office space on the north side to downtown, if you're going to pay about the same rate, but you get free parking space up north. So if you start talking about 100 employees, you multiply with $100 and some an hour, a month, it starts adding up quite a bit. So we have to create the pieces for people to be able to move people so that actually will help with when you're reducing the amount of parking spaces needed. So there could be green space, or if Dave is going to build 500 new parking spaces for his building, he might have only built 100. When he's building 100, that means that he doesn't have to, he can develop more buildings downtown. That means you're seeing more development downtown. So it's not really just able to subsidize people that can't afford to get on but creating a culture that it feels cool. It actually has economic impact, trying to get people employed. When they're employed, they're paying taxes. And then with that, you're actually shrinking your need for cars, which means that less garage spaces, meaning that reduces the development expense of a project, which means that we're actually able to develop more buildings downtown.
So David, last thought, you're in...
Contribution.
Yeah.
Reduces the city contribution as well.
So,
you want to say that
that's a good point. So at the end of the day, you're developing in other communities that do have transit. Is it taking away the parking demand for your residential units? Do you have to build less?
Yes, we have two developments, one in Chicago, one in Minneapolis. Both are right on rail stops. We absolutely would not be there except for those rail stops. So we come in, make a huge investment, wouldn't make that investment unless the train was there. And yeah, people, it may not, in our locations, you may not do away with all of your cars, but let's say you have 2 cars in the family, you very likely may go down to 1 car because you don't need it all the time. And if it's even more urban, you may do away with all the cars. So Ursal's point is absolutely right on. Parking, doing away with parking, yeah, there's a big savings to the city, and you just don't need it. So it's critical.
All right, we're going to go to the crowd. Connie and I think others are going to go around, and I'm going to shut up. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. And yeah, we want to... We want to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions. So does anybody have a question for us?
Yeah, I think it's great that downtown's improving and becoming a better place to live. But one thing I haven't heard anything about is that a lot of these young people eventually are going to have families. They'll have children to deal with. And when that happens, are they going to have to move out of the downtown area? If there's something for children to do or young families to do downtown, the question occurs is that when they reach school age, what are the quality of schools in the downtown area? And right now, IPS doesn't have a very good reputation. So I think improving the school system is important, and understanding that eventually young people will eventually have families, and they'll need to do something with those families. Are they going to have to move out of the downtown area back to the suburbs to get a better school system or to have something for their families to do?
I'll take that. It's a great question and one we hear a lot. I would say currently they don't have to move. Now many do, but if you look around, there are a number of good schools around downtown. Some are IPS, but some of the best one of the best schools in the region is an IPS school downtown. So they don't have to currently, but again, many do. So it's our job to make sure they're aware of the opportunities, and it is increasing the number of schools because we have more people coming downtown. I think, there will be some people who, with a family, will want maybe a yard instead of, a tower living experience. And I think the key there is, instead of them thinking to move to Carmel or Fishers or Greenwood or where have you, they just look at kind of the surrounding ring of downtown and some of the more neighborhoods, more traditional neighborhoods there that have good, a lot of square feet, a lot of yard space, and we're still able to capture them, if not core downtown, still in and around downtown, and get the benefit of them living here. Sherry probably has a lot of thoughts on this as well.
I agree. I mean, we hear schools, beyond transit, probably schools is the second issue that I hear about, well, on parking, hear about often. And, as Darren mentioned, Center for Inquiry is, it's based on a lottery system, but it is an IPS school. It's a tremendous school that a number of families, their children go there. We do need more. We don't have a playground in downtown. We don't have, when you think about just places for kids to go and play, we need to add more to our existing public space. We do have a number of charter schools. Some are very good, but you're right. I mean, people just aren't quite there yet. Oftentimes with charter schools, I think they just need to be better informed about the standards by which they're measured. Heron High School was created really from a couple of families that were frustrated that there wasn't a good high school. And so I think as people move downtown and we create a more dense environment, families will start pushing for more schools, better schools. So I think it will come, but we really need to get the residents downtown.
Any other questions?
As a resident of Indianapolis, one of the concerns I have is when the market reaches a saturation point for the housing, what's to ensure that it's not going to turn into something like the Meadows up around the fairgrounds, where it's, basically the bottom falls out, just like when the condo collapsed a couple years ago, or about 5 or 6 years ago. What's to ensure that this isn't going to become a bunch of Section 8 housing? Thank you.
We also have George Tickajohn here in the audience, so we'd probably like to respond to this as well. But
I can comment to that. First of all, Section 8 housing is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's important for communities to have a mix of the higher income and more affordable housing as well. And Indianapolis Housing Agency, Bud Myers, Bruce Baird have done a wonderful job in providing, we've worked with them on providing some very affordable, high quality housing, so you have a real mix in Indianapolis. The condo deal was a little bit different. That was being spurred by speculative investment of people buying units they weren't really intending to live in. When we had our worst real estate crash since the Great Depression, the apartment market was still strong. You couldn't borrow money to build, but your properties were staying full even though the economy had really tanked. So can you absolutely guarantee that everything's going to be great? No, but the stuff that's being built downtown is very high quality. And let's say we're off as developers where we thought we could get one rent and it's a little bit less. The quality doesn't suffer. It may have an impact on how much cash flow that property could produce, but the high quality housing is there. And it's not a, I don't think we're going to get into an overbuilt situation. We haven't seen it anywhere around the country. I know people are talking about all this housing. Is it going to get too soft? Is it overbuilt? Doesn't say it can't happen. We haven't seen it in any city yet, and what Indianapolis is doing is a fair amount, but it's small compared to what a lot of other cities are doing.
The only thing I would add to that is the key is that you have the job base in and around these units, and I think downtown's going to be able to maintain that, and I think it's going to continue to grow, which will create health on the housing side. And on the Meadows, it is going through a pretty amazing transformation right now. I've been able to spend some time with Gene Zink and his group. It's pretty cool to get out there to see how they have turned the tide on that. But it's a fair question.
Mr. Tickajohn, do you want to comment on that? I don't know where you're sitting, but.
Right here.
Oh, do you want to make a comment?
Sure do. Yeah.
traditionally in Indianapolis, new properties are well received, and the challenges fall to the existing properties. So it's just will be if we do have continuation of new construction downtown, the existing older properties downtown will just have to upgrade to compete. And it's a capitalist, it's a free economy, so owners that choose not to do that will suffer the consequences, but then properties will be recapitalized. So there's a cycle that happens. So I'm not really concerned about the level of new construction downtown.
Any other questions?
I'm Ed Freeman, and I actually work for a national home builder, David Weekley Homes, and we're trying to look infill in Indianapolis, downtown, all around. With the recent announcement for the former GM plant, with the jails and the courts and everything there, obviously for us, it would have been a great opportunity, and still may be a great opportunity to build single-family homes. How do you see that being developed? I know that some of you are possibly petitioners, maybe not, because it's all, I know, very tight-lipped. But I'm just curious, what happens now, since we're going to be building courts there? Will we have other opportunities to build residential, retail, et cetera?
I'll take that. We do not own that property. I think many people assume that we do or believe that we do, and we really don't. I mean, we do have a pretty enviable position of kind of veto power, so to speak, but that is owned by a private entity, Racer Trust, and they are going through the disposition process now. I would just tell you that the criminal justice facility is not the only thing being discussed for that site. I would also say that anytime you have what is going to be a $500 million investment, it's going to have a catalytic effect. Is it a positive catalytic effect, even if it may not be the exact use that some wanted there? But I will tell you, Racer Trust, who owns the property, put out an RFP, a national RFP, and with their networks, they know a lot of developers, and there was no interest. There wasn't really any interest in putting housing there at this time. Maybe that changes. My personal opinion is we need to get the east side of the river kind of infilled all the way up to the river so that to make the GM stand more attractive. I'll also say that if you've seen the modern criminal justice facilities, they are not the deterrent to development that many envision. They're really more office looking, and this is only going to take up the kind of western third of the property that was already industrial. By all indications, was going to remain industrial no matter what else occurred on the eastern portion. So I think that there's still opportunities for a myriad of different developments and uses in and around there.
Okay, we'll take one more question. This gentleman.
Staying on the theme of the Justice Center, obviously there's a lot of thought going into what is going to take place downtown when everything that is there now moves out to the Justice Center. And we've heard both sides of it. We've heard, it's going to create all these eyesores that are going to sit there. Then we've heard the other side where it's a tremendous opportunity to infill and bring all kinds of new things. So I just wondered what the plan is. Which one of those two scenarios do you believe are the correct one? What are we going to see there?
I'll take that one too. I think it's, if I remember your order, the latter. I think it'll have a positive impact. Because I think that the GM site being so close to downtown, a lot of the, whether it's attorneys or other people involved in the criminal justice industry, if you will be able to remain where they're at. What we may see leave are stuff like bail bonds. We'll see a jail leave, and that opens up a lot of positive development opportunities. So and the city-county building will be backfilled with hundreds of employees who are now elsewhere, many outside of downtown, that we can bring back into the building. So from our standpoint, we believe it'll be positive. We recognize that it may not be positive for everyone, but generally we think it's a overwhelmingly positive thing for downtown. I don't know if anyone else up here wants to speak to that.
The only other thing I was going to add is when you go to the city-county building to meet with Adam, Darren, you're going to conduct business. And in a perfect world, you wouldn't go through a metal detector and you wouldn't wait in line. You would conduct business like you would if we came to see you, Ed, in a normal atmosphere. So I don't know if we're going to be able to pull that off, but it would be awful nice to create a true office welcoming environment where this is the building that you do business versus this is the building that you're doing business, but you got to be very careful because there's some other things going on there as well. So I do think it's going to be great. And will a couple people be potentially hurt? Yes, but this concept I think will be incredible for the city.